Thank you, Teresa. What a really, really, really kind introduction. Thank you. It's really good to see you, and I hope you're well. And I totally saw what was going on there, and I know a little bit of history about you and your mom, and you were there till, through the whole thing. So I got to watch and learn there too. So thank you. Yes. So Teresa read the steps. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Just that. Oof. My sobriety date, September 25th, 1987. And I'm going to talk about this step in the context of Alcoholics Anonymous, even though through the continued practice of this step, which I came to, and really I'm going to talk about 10, because I always do a much better 10 when I'm doing 11, better 11 when I'm doing 10. And 10, of course, is the first 9. So we don't leave anything out. Everything brought me to this. And then it says, in our book, in a lot of different places, it says, go out there and find some more. It never says, we're the only ones who know. Never says, too bad they don't have what we have. It says, it never says any of that stuff. It says, man, there's a lot of good stuff on spirituality, a lot of great experience, and we suggest you avail yourself of it. Now, having said that, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous 36 years ago, I had, when I was a small child, I had a relationship with this power greater than myself. We call it God, or I call it the big mystery. I'm more comfortable with the big mystery. It's, I don't have to get mad at it or anything. I just go, whoop, well, I guess I don't know. And sometimes it's a bigger whoop than that. But, when alcohol came along, it felt like it connected me. It felt like it made that feeling that we would have for a friend, all the more rich. And if you will, I also was one of those people who would say, alcohol works for me. In fact, it felt like it worked for me. And so much so that I let it become my spirituality. It was the great counterfeit for it. I could say a prayer, and try to figure out all the stuff and, have to have patience for things to come and, pray every day and all of that. Or I could take a drink and everything was better right now. So why wouldn't I drink that? And the more that I drank, of course, the more I closed off that channel to the actual power greater than myself, or the big mystery, or life force, or whatever you want to call it. And then over time, everything that I put into my body trying to access that power were the very things that were blocking me. And then when I got sober, it was just me that was blocking me. But I had to get sober in order to see that, come to this. And I took the steps, and spirituality is not linear. And we say, well, we work the steps in order, but spirit doesn't care where you are in the steps. Sometimes it'll slide right in there and surprise you. I found that, as crazy as I felt when I was new and didn't know if Alcoholics Anonymous was going to work, didn't know if these spiritual actions were going to take, every now and then I would be overcome and overwhelmed by that complete knowing that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And it didn't last a long time at first, especially, but it was enough to keep me going. And even though the obsession to drink did not leave me till I was about 9 months sober, I feel like it's important to mention these things. I know I'm on an 11-step talk, but the reason that I continue this is because it provides a spiritual cushion. I am not walking around every day running away from a drink. I'm not. I know that that's at stake. If I were to stop the process of self-examination, prayer and meditation, I didn't read my thing yet, but I'm getting to that. Now I forgot what I was going to say. So I'm going to go ahead and read my thing. page 98, there is a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit, but when they are logically related and interwoven, the result is an unshakable foundation for life. Now and then we may be granted a glimpse of that ultimate reality, which is God's kingdom, and we will be comforted and assured that our own destiny in that realm will be secure for so long as we try, however falteringly, to find and do the will of our own Creator. And I love that. And, in step 6 as well, right about the time that he was writing this book, Bill also wrote that letter on emotional sobriety, and he blended this in. And I always see so many parallels in that letter, and then especially in his writings in step 6, 7, and 11 in particular, however falteringly, which means I'm going to have to be at this. I'm going to have to be practicing this every day. After I've taken those first 9 steps and I get into 10, what I have is a license to practice. I'm like, okay, now I'm going to use the tools, and I'm going to have to tweak this new garment that I've been, given. And sometimes I'm going to have to let it out. And sometimes it's going to have to be taken in, but it's going to be a continual adjustment as I awaken. And the process that I began with and still use is on pages 84 through 88 in our big book. That's, it's just such a great and I couldn't always memorize it when I was new. So I would write it on little index cards and take, at different times of the day, or when I'd get agitated, I'd pull out the pause when agitated card, and then I would use them. And for me, all of this is really a lot like learning how to dance for me. When we're learning to do any kind of dance, what do? We get up there with the teacher, and the teacher teaches us to count. And we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you go, what step are you on? I don't know. I'm on the back step. What do and we get very, very technical, and we're so cute. You can see the beginners out there. We're like 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I'm going to go write inventory. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go make an amends now. And do I owe an amends? And we're just all, we're very sincere, and we're all in. And then after a while, before we know it, we find ourselves just doing the dance. And that's where what I get through what I got through the process of practicing what's on pages 84 through 88, not just reading them, because I found that, reading the stuff is about, you get about as nourished as if you go to a restaurant and eat the menu. You're not gonna get any nutrition there. So I had to actually start to practice it. And however falteringly, meaning I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to look weird. And I used to love to hear Vince Yo talk, because he said, you can't be afraid to look bad in Alcoholics Anonymous. We just get out there and we show we walk around with our spiritual skirt tucked up into our pantyhose, but we're trying. And so I love that. It says, so as long as we try, however falteringly, and some days I have some really, really magnificent times, and other days, it's just like my sponsor Marguerite used to call oatmeal days. And I'm going through a thing right now where my entire experience is being shifted yet again. A lot of old ideas are being kind of dug up out of, the roots and they're being dug up I don't know if they're to be examined or just let go or rearranged, but whatever is happening, it can be very uncomfortable, partly because I don't even know how to talk about it yet. Again, not just once. I mean, we say our 12 step says, having had a spiritual awakening, what are you talking about? In 36 years, like many, 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 what are we talking about when we say a surrender? Not one, not two, many, 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 one of my favorite quotes is by a woman named Paula Darcy, who says, God comes to us disguised as our lives. And that's exactly it for me. I get up and I walk out in the world, and I get the nudge or the cue, where to be quiet, where to listen. What is that I don't like there? And that practice of restraint of tongue and pen. And the reason that that I really love this too. I don't like to practice step 11 without step 10, because maybe this has happened to you, but I remember early on when I was infatuated with step 11 and just going out and, not only doing what's in the big book and the 12 and 12, but then, availing myself of all kind, taking deep dives into different spiritual traditions. And it's magnificent, right? I mean, you feel like, I felt like my feet were just flying off, just floating through life sometimes, and taking care of troubles and, doing the daily work. But man, it just felt like, my head was in the clouds all the time. And then, I got a hold of that prayer that it's in one of the stories in the back of the book, where it says, when somebody when you have a resentment, when she had a resentment, she prayed for the person for 2 weeks. And then after a couple of weeks, the resentment was gone. She wished them everything it was she wanted for herself. And, that would be great. And, why I started to really bring step 10 back into this is because I started hearing people say out loud what I was thinking. And that's when they'd say, oh, somebody was bugging them. And then they'll go, I'm praying for them. And where I'm going with this. Like it gets to be, the spiritual pride, is the other side of this. We can get way beyond the scope of our abilities sometimes. And I started reminding myself of that. If you ever saw that show Saturday Night Live years ago, when it was really, really, really funny, and they had a character on it called Church Lady, and she knew all the sinners, I don't know if you've ever caught yourself, but I know I certainly have, when I'm walking through a meeting or a convention or just, sitting at home having my coffee, thinking about, how they're not doing it right. And, the little sinners. And so if I run that voice and the picture of her face through my head as those thoughts are going through, then it better dismantles it, Now, once I've come back to that format, it's on page 67 in our big book. It was the training wheels for, it's when I practice my 10th step. If I do a written, it looks just like my 4th step. But because I'm continuing to take inventory, that's why I call it my 10th step, because I'm continuing the same stuff. So, there's that place on page 66 and just in 67 where it says, though we didn't like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, are spiritually sick. He like me, just like me. Haven't I done something like that before? Couldn't I do something like that again? Am I right now somewhere in my life? Maybe I can't see it right now because I'm so focused on watching this person do what she's doing or he's doing. I can't see yet that I'm doing that somewhere in my life. And so I'm just like you. They're spiritually sick like me. And when I recognize the like me, and that carries off into the 10th step, self-examination, that I gotta have this intact so that when I am practicing and living in the realm of the spirit and living in meditation and then going through my day in the very practical way, it stops me short, and maybe I might have to say something. Maybe it doesn't always resolve conflict, but it does resolve conflict in me. I may have to stand up and disagree with somebody. I may have to, take some kind of action, but it doesn't become, that long-term resentment necessarily. It doesn't have to. I learned how to behave in Alcoholics Anonymous, but mine is the head I walk around with. And this is the stuff that dismantles the stuff that goes on in my head. And then in meditation, I began to learn that all of the thoughts that are in my head, I do not have to sit down and entertain. I can sit and watch them and let them entertain me. And often through practice, that's what's happened. However, falteringly, because sometimes I'm tired. Sometimes the thought will come and I'll forget that, nope, don't need that one, and grab onto it. And before I know it, not a part of, they didn't invite me to the damn party. They're often, that slow separation. that isn't alcoholism, by the way. Every human being is the illusion of every human being of that feeling of separation. And the remedy for that is to connect with spirit again. And, and I'm not dissing us. I am so grateful that we have an immediate fellowship that spoke directly to me and the problem that I had. Alcoholics Anonymous for me was the doorway back to all of this. And so thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous. But I have to keep it in some kind of perspective, because this very practice of meditation and becoming, living in the spiritual realm, we can get very funny. And, we hear things like, oh, well, they don't have a program. So I'm just going to have to, pray for them. And, church lady comes out and, I got to watch. That's for me to be aware of. And a lot of times I can, right before it has to come out of my mouth. My sponsor, Marguerite, used to say she was rarely sorry for anything she didn't say. Most of the time that's true for me too. But, and I guess because in Alcoholics Anonymous right now, there's so many ideas. It's such an exciting and kind of frightening time in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm sure that it's kind of another flying blind time here, with us all having to, back then there was a very limited view. There was a very limited exposure even to personal practices, personal spiritual practices and things. Heck, we literally had some of our roots in the Oxford group, which was heavy Christianity, although it was made clear in the beginning. And even Dr. Bob wrote a little blurb in the old Akron manuals that, he likened Alcoholics Anonymous and the steps to Buddhism and Judaism and other the eight. Yeah. So anyway, so they had this knowledge, but it still had a very Christian tone to it, which there's nothing wrong with that. But now more has been added on. Now there has been more exposure to more. I remember seeing a woman, she was sharing one at a women's conference and she had just come from India, and she said she did an Indian accent very well. I'm not going to try to do it, but she said, I just came from India and I went to a lot of AA meetings over there, and I can guarantee you they're not saying the Lord's Prayer over there. I'm not trying to, make this a political thing one way or the other, but what she was saying, and for me, it's true, is that more is added on. Live and let live. And let's see, you just read about something that can block us from a spiritual awakening is contempt prior to investigation. So if I hear a prayer that I'm not familiar with, can I sit and say, oh, wow, listen to what that says, and then how much human beings, and including alcoholics, love certainty, right? So as soon as we find another one, the same thing happened kind of with the set aside prayer, right? Beautiful prayer. I mean, great meditation. Let me put aside everything I think I know. Let me open my mind. It's a great opening. It's a great exercise for that. Happens. We clamp down on it and make it the prayer. What? You don't know the set aside prayer? And then sinners, then the little sinners. And, so, I just have to, and I'm talking from my point of view too. There's nothing, I have read the big book and worked the steps in self-defense, self-preservation, I have to say too. I just want to be up on what you're talking about so that I can argue it too. If I can sound like a walking big book, hey, let's have at it. And then, and all of that is in good, with good intention. But I've got it then, if I am if I am practicing steps 10 and 11, practicing self-examination, prayer, meditation, hopefully I'll run into that. I'll run into myself, basically because you reflect it back to me, either that or cancel me, shun me, or, and I begin to wake up to me being in my own way again. And then what has to be relinquished. And then I have new eyes. But all of that's a process. And so it's why, these days, if I know how hard it is for me to just grow up and open up and not be so rigid and dogmatic, in some ways. And I'm not, and I'll tell you, I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't think of myself as being rigid and dogmatic until I am. And then, damn it, so I've got to watch for it. And then that, of course, that spiritual pride, how many, sorry about that beat. That was my husband's air and he needs that. So we're going to let him have it. So where am I? I got just a few more minutes. So self-examination has to go with the prayer and meditation. And I don't know, I think it bears repeating that God comes to us disguised as our lives. And I've got to make room for the new ideas to walk around. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's why when we're back to the first step, it's why I think it's so important that I understand what alcoholism is. That alcoholism for me is the best description that I still believe exists is on page 44. It's just a paragraph. It's very quick. It's and easy. If when you honestly want to find you can't quit entirely, or if when drinking have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from a spiritual illness that from an illness that experience will conquer. So there's a problem and the solution all at once. And I don't like to get the two mixed up, because a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening is many times going to include some bad thoughts, bad behavior, big fear, and all of those feelings that I used to just, instead of saying a prayer or meditating or helping another person, I just take a drink. So now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing this instead. And through the practice of that, eventually the obsession to drink was expelled, because I did this instead, not because I stood and said, no, don't drink. But I need to remember this. Because there's never going to be a time that I'm so spiritually fit that I can take a drink of alcohol in any form at all, not brandy form or rum form or Listerine form or cough medicine form. There's never going to be a time where I'm so spiritual that will be on the books for me. And so this is why when I go to church, if you might find me at a Sunday sermon or a Saturday synagogue or a Buddhist temple, you might find me anywhere, sitting in the middle of whatever tradition that is. But I cannot go. I learned here in Alcoholics Anonymous that I am not one of those people who can go to the Sunday picnic and have a glass of wine with the rest of them. This is where I learned that. This is the singleness of purpose held intact for this. It was my doorway back to being able to find, connect, and practice a form of spirituality that ironically sends me back out into the world at large. It doesn't say sit in Alcoholics Anonymous and only help alcoholics. We're the only ones who know. Don't go anywhere. You can't. We're special. It doesn't say any of that anywhere in the literature I've ever read. And I am a voracious reader. I haven't read it all, I can promise you, but it says we can expand. And then in the 11th step, in the promises, in the 11th step in the big book, and then also here in the 12 and 12, it promises that our intuition is going to be fired, that we're going to be able to trust it. We're going to come to rely on our intuition. We're also going to make mistakes, but we're going to come to rely on our intuition through this practice and process, this self-examination, prayer and meditation. And and that my thinking will get better when it's removed of wrong motives. And that means I'm going to practice the process, surrender the old thoughts that do stick to me, surrender control over the things over which I have no control, and make amends where I mess up, and let somebody tell me if I didn't know or hadn't realized it, then I get to listen without interrupting, and find out where I might have messed up, and then take corrective action. And that's on a daily basis. That's and it might sound like, oh my God, are we just so self-obsessed? Another form of self-obsession, but it's not. It's really more of a self-awareness. It's really more, I can feel it in my solar plexus when I'm getting ready to be selfish, when I'm getting ready to be self-seeking, when, searching whether it's approval or friendship or attention or something. I can feel that welling up, and or dishonesty. When I get afraid, I want to be dishonest. All of that's born of fear. So because I meditate every day, I can become more responsive to my life than reactive. And step 10, self-examination, helps me to recognize when it's about to come, so that a lot of the stuff that I do can be preemptive. So I don't actually have to make every single mistake that comes along. And, and I know that this is true by when I was new, now when I call my sponsor and I run a plan by her and I say, I'm thinking about this, and this is what, this is the plan I have. She may have a couple of tweaks, but most of the time she's going, yeah, that sounds right. Sounds well thought out. Go ahead with that plan. Yeah. When I was new, that's not what she said. Never. So over the last 36 years, I have gotten better. And I like to say that because, I know we do it in an attempt to stay humble and stay teachable. I never want to get cocky, but I do want to another definition of humility is being accurately apprised of our strengths as well as our weaknesses. And if I'm better, I don't want to convey to you that I'm running down the street just crazy all the time, crazy and scared all the time, because that's not true. I am way better than I was when I got here. Otherwise, I would have started to look for something somewhere else a long time ago. But it's through this practice, self-examination, prayer, meditation, when logically woven together, provides this unshakable foundation for life. Again, when people transition, I'm going to be sad. Sadness is not being unspiritual. We came equipped for grief. We came with that inside us. We have the facility for grief. That's what tears are. And that hurt inside us. That's, it's the oppression of all of that stuff that gets me in trouble. It's the not acknowledging and letting it out in strange ways. So, this need to get closer and closer to who it is I believe that God would have me be. It's still a big mystery to me. Sometimes I think I need to live to be 140 before I fully bloom. But in the meantime, this is what I do. I still love the outlines in the big book and the 12 and 12. And I'm so glad too that I haven't heard this in a while, but I'm going to say it anyway, that I'm probably preaching to the choir because this is a 12 and 12 meeting. But I just don't understand that how they separate they make the big book the one we worship and the 12 and 12 not so much, when to me it had to be somebody who could write this book with so much experience in a time in his life when he was going through a bone-crushing depression and still come out with this kind of wisdom. Which one is more divinely inspired? So again, if God comes to us disguised as our lives, then, and if God is everything, then wouldn't it be in this too? So rather than the either or, it's got to be this too. And in meditation, again, if I didn't say it, I am not my thoughts. They are passing through the ether. It's why sometimes I think we all think that we made stuff up, like we want to credit ourselves, or thank you. We want to credit ourselves or be quoted, oh, so-and-so said this when, yeah, and so did so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, because why? Because it's just true. So lest we get too big for our britches, and I'll just say that about me, lest I get too big for my britches, because if you continue to do that, I look at that and, my friend Larry Peterson used to say, don't think that's going to look any better on you when you're doing it. And you have, and you will, and you'll do it again. So, we all reflect to each other what something looks like, and hopefully we're helping each other. I'm either a very great example or a terrible warning on any given day, depending on, how shored up I am. But this is the shoring up process. Again, I came to trust the process in 1 through 9, continue it in 10, grow it in 11, and share it in 12. And that's really the sum of it all for me. And I appreciate coming on. It's really good to see a lot of you. I feel very, I don't even know what the word is for this, but very comforted and joyful to be here with you guys tonight. Thank you. You're muted, Lana.
Okay, Lana Alcoholic. Carla, it is so wonderful to see you. And I hope Doug is doing well. And you know what came to me today? The very first time that I spoke at a large group, which was our convention, you were one of the speakers at that weekend in Somerset. And I spoke at the spiritual Sunday morning. And that was my first time doing something like that. And I remember you cheering me on. It came to me so clearly today. So I want to thank you for that, because I definitely needed your love and support, And my question was this, though. I don't know if it has to do with 11 stuff or not, but anyway. Okay, so, we go through things in recovery and you do some writing on it and stuff. But when is it that you just have to put down the pen and paper and trust your higher power? When is that? Because I know people that will write and write and write. And I'm thinking, when do we cross the bridge and allow, so that is my question. And it's so good to see you. I love you, Carla. I love
you too, Lana. Oh my goodness. It's great to see you. Yeah, I know. I laugh at that a lot too. And I've done it. And it's, we just get, it comes from being well-intentioned, we want to, but after a while, writing about ourselves again, it's now become an exercise in self-obsession. So we're writing about me again. And, it's not only okay, but I think it's necessary that we just get out and try our wings. It's like you can read a book about swimming, but unless you jump in the water and start, going and feel the water and feel that's why when, it's so hard to come from the intellect to describe some of these things, because you can't get it all done. You couldn't describe swimming maybe in a half an hour, because there's so much. Oh, and if the tide comes this way, and oh, if, so here are some basic, structural that will hold you through the turning of the tide and this is how you can hold yourself through them. But so, yes, I for me, there was one incident that happened in my life that took several inventories, but I would do it and then I would walk a while, and do my life, and then, okay. And then come back at it. And then not several, it took about 3. And then the 7-step prayer actually became a mantra for me for a while, to come through a way of forgiveness and just a new way of seeing something. So I think we'll know it. I think that when we're choking on it, or hopefully somebody close to us will tell us, okay, why don't you put it down? Put the pen down and go out and live your life. And, Bill says it in essence in the book, when all else fails, and hopefully you've already done all else. We've already looked at that. We've changed, become willing to change our minds, surrendered, done the inventory, take corrective action that we know of. Now put it away and go help somebody.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Carla. Hey, Sydney, come on in. Welcome.
Thank you. Hey, I'm Sydney, and I'm an alcoholic from Portland, Oregon.
Hi, Sydney.
Carla, hi. Carla, it's amazing. This is amazing. I literally just got off the phone with my sponsor right before this meeting. And it was so exactly what you're talking about. I loved that you talked about grief and how we are equipped to deal with that and depression, because there are real things that crop up in sobriety. And multiple spiritual experiences. My first year in sobriety, I worked the steps really quickly, and then stayed for about a year, and then I just kind of went my own way and delved into my spirituality to try and figure out what it meant to me. And slowly but surely, due to circumstances in my life, as God shows up as my life, I needed to come back. And so your talk meant the world to me. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Sydney. I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
Great to have you with us, Sydney. Hey, Nash, come on in, brother.
Everybody, thank you. My name is Nash. Carla, thank you for tonight. I'm curious to know how the spirit. You get a gut feeling in your solar plex, and are there other ways that the spirit comes to you? Visuals, or like if it comes to you through a voice, or just curious to hear if it comes in different shapes, forms.
Well, yeah, thanks. That's a good question. And my belief, the idea that I operate on is that God is here. I am a part of this big mystery. And sometimes it is that fear comes up. It's the signal that comes up through my solar plexus. That's fear. And then I have to ask myself, what am I afraid of? Sometimes love comes in an overwhelming. It feels like clear water, but bigger. But my belief, like I said, is that if God is everything and I am a part of this, then God doesn't show up. I wake up, and that's the goal. That what's in the way of seeing what's already here, and usually it's me, something in me, and I'm the queen of petty, and so when, and I can forget that that's what's in the way and hang on to it. Like, for longer than, it is wise, for longer than feels good, and then recognize it and then relinquish it. So God comes sometimes in the form of what seems to be coincidence, something that shows me something. Somebody will say something maybe in a meeting that, here's how I used to put it, and I haven't said this in a while, but it's true still, that God answers questions I don't ask out loud. And I don't always even know that they needed asking. And yet here comes something. So, and whether it comes from a person or a happening or something. And so that's why I say God doesn't show up. I wake up to something that already is. It's already fabulous. And it's just me that's not, I need the change of perception. I hope that helps. I hope that was clear.
Thanks so much, Carla. That was great. Hey, Calvin, come on in, brother.
Hello, everybody. My name is Calvin. I'm an alcoholic. Carla, thank you so much. And every time that I get a chance to hear you, You always carry a strong message. And I've heard you speak a lot of different times in a lot of different ways. So, you really always touch me. But when you talked tonight about Church Girl, and you talked about righteous pride, spiritual pride, and that's what gets you when you get a little bit of time in your program, you think you know what you're doing. And you start to nose down. And what I combat that with sometimes is, and I combat that with, I identify with everybody I can. I don't compare, right? I try to identify. So I'm saying if I'm just like you, then I can't be better than you, and then I always kind of see that if I'm looking up, I'm sure looking down. If I'm looking down, if I'm looking up at somebody, I'm sure looking down. And I think we all talk about, and I hear you talk about it before, we walk shoulder to shoulders, right? We walk shoulder to shoulder, and that comes after a while. Did you know that we walk shoulder to shoulder? And I just love you dearly, girl. I really do. And I love when every time I get a chance to hear you share. So thank you. Thank you so much, Carla.
Thanks, Calvin. I love you guys. Love you and Lana. Love you.
Calvin, you're such a sweet soul. Irina, come on in. Welcome.
Hi, family. Irina, alcoholic. Carla, thank you. This is just what I needed today. And thank you for sharing that vulnerable spot where something's coming up. It's getting drudged up again. But and you put it very, very eloquently for me, because I can't always put it to words. So I've got to start writing for a while. And thank you for that warning too, towards the end, like, well, I got to be careful I don't write, because then it's back about me. And the church lady from SNL, you had me there too. I mean, I heard the voice and I was like, oh my gosh, it is just that can be me on so many occasions. But thank you for a lot of great reminders. And there was one, what I'm curious about, because you said AA is like the doorway to the rest of the spiritual world for us. Now that we've put the drink down and we're living a different life, who are some of your greatest influencers for yourself? Because I can go down a rabbit hole anytime because there's so much out there. Who are some of the great ones that influenced you, and who do you refer to when you are trying to expand your spiritual knowledge? And also, you mentioned a person who had the quote, God comes to us disguised as our lives. Could you just mention who that is again, please?
Yeah, that was a quote from a woman named Paula Darcy, and Father Richard Rohr mentions her quite a bit. That's where I heard her name, Paula. And then the last name is capital D apostrophe ARCY. And funny enough, I've never delved too much into her writing yet, but I love Father Richard Rohr as well. And he's got he was like Emmett Fox for me. Emmett Fox was because I had a background when I was young. There was a kind of rigid and I didn't understand them, and I rebelled against them, but I also didn't understand them, and I was afraid of them. Some ideas about spirit. Emmett Fox was a great he broke down a lot of ideas for me in a way that I could swallow them, and then I was able to see and not have to say, well, that's not working. Of course it is. It's great. Every great religion started with a bunch of people who wanted to practice spirituality, I think. And then, I'll dare to say that a little bit. And then we get like we do in AA. AA is a great spiritual movement, but don't think that you're not going to hear some of these conversations. Go to a general service meeting, or they're pretty respectful too, but or go to a business meeting of your home group and talk about what color the literature rack has to be for an hour, or so, power, control, all of it. We're not immune to those things. We just have a simple way of looking at them. And if we're willing, we're going to admit and go, God, there I am. Oh, and then let it go. Don't spend time, why'd I do that? And we're going to until we stop having to do that. And then we just let it go and move on.
Thank you, Carla. Uda, I see you had your hand up. Did you want to ask a question?
My name is Uda, and I'm an alcoholic.
No.
And I want to thank you so much for your presentation today. Just simply taught me from the heart. And I need to come to grips with the feeling that I grew up in many different European countries. And every time I feel this rumbling in my stomach that I did something wrong, I said something wrong, or whatever it may be, I end up saying, well, that's culturally different. And to me, is that the ego? I don't know. But I'm trying to understand why I'm using that cultural difference as an excuse to be the real spiritual Uda. Thank you.
Thanks, Uda. Thank you. I just wanted to mention too, to the person who asked the question just before too, I mean, some people that really, really helped me grow that I continue to count on too. I don't want to leave them out because they're an integral part of my life today. And that's Ram Dass, Alan Watts, who has long left us a long time. I find that I'm taking any of this way too seriously. Boy, I listen to Alan Watts and man, he'll smack it down for you. And I love that, you know, he just like won't let us get used to any kind of dogma. And, you know, so, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who is a dynamic Buddhist teacher. However, he died of drug addiction and alcoholism. So, you know, you can have lots of spiritual wisdom. If you're an alcoholic and you drink, then it's not, you know, you're going to go that way. So, you're going to, you know, do what we know happens. So, anyway, it doesn't mean that and then his student Pema Chodron, who I'm sure a lot of you know these people, but, you know, but here's the thing, when one of them mentions a teacher that impacted them, I look up that teacher as well. And then I've taken some deep dives in a few of the traditions. I do Vedic meditation. That's my staple. And, you know, but I say it's in each of us. Howard Poland said it best, and then I know I got to shut up. He said, wherever you see God pass, mark that spot and go sit in that window again. And that's, you know, that, so then this growth, this meditation, self-examination is not only a privilege and a discovery time, but it's a responsibility if I want to grow. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.